thank you for joining us tonight as we make history with our first ever virtual junior livestock show. I'm Todd Bannister, your Ringside Master of Ceremonies for this evening, and with me tonight is Jackie Eshelby, the San Diego County Director of Fair Exhibits.
Thank you. Welcome. I want to begin by thanking all of our incredible livestock leaders, parents, and exhibitors. This has truly been a year for the record books, and we have all overcome new obstacles that I believe will open the door for unforeseen opportunities in the years to come. A few housekeeping issues before we begin tonight's program. This full show, it is almost 3 hours, will be available to watch the entire judging tomorrow on our YouTube channel, as well as the show that we're taping tonight will be available. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the virtual junior livestock auction will be live with links on our website at sdfair.com and our Facebook page. The lots begin with donation tabs for both the Friends of San Diego County Fair Junior Livestock Auction Support Club and the Don Diego Scholarship. They will be followed by the live animal bidding in the order of market goats, market beef, market lambs, and market hogs. The remaining lots will be for the exhibitors who entered the virtual show and have the opportunity to receive add-on bids. Please be aware that when we go live on Saturday morning, that the add-on feature will not appear until after the close of the final lot. If you have any questions during the next 2 days of the auction, the best resource is to email us at jla@sdfair.com. Altogether, jla@sdfair.com. We could have never climbed the mountain of success without a little help from our friends. I would like to thank the many fairground staff that have come together to make this new show a reality and learn the sacred language of livestock. From our production team to our operations team, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Finally, the exhibits team, Nicola, Jen, Pat, Nicole, Heidi, Elvie, and Jason, I am beyond proud of all of you and the can-do attitude that has become our mantra. In the famous words of Ronald Reagan, there is no limit to the amount of good that you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. Working as a team in uncharted waters, the credit belongs to the whole. We're excited to share the top-end results with you this evening, and hopefully, fingers crossed, and the technology guys on our side, we have a few tricks up our sleeve to make this experience as live as possible for a Ringside champion drive. Good luck to all the exhibitors and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Jackie. Now let's get the show started. I would like to welcome our judges joining us live from Oklahoma. They are Kylie Patterson, Jesse Henson, and Nolan Hildebrand. Thank you, Kylie, Jesse, and Nolan, for volunteering your time to evaluate this year's livestock. We truly appreciate the hours you've spent over the last week producing videos and joining us tonight. Your efforts have enhanced the exhibitor's experience. We will begin the evening with our cattle show and Judge Kylie Patterson. Kylie Patterson is a native of San Antonio, Texas. She grew up on a small Brahman cattle operation where her and her sister competitively exhibited their cattle across the nation. Patty attended Glenn College in Brenham, Texas, before transferring to Oklahoma State University. She was an integral part of both highly successful livestock judging teams and was the only woman to win high individual at the national contest in Louisville, Kentucky, both in her junior and senior years at Oklahoma State. She also broke the all-time scoring record on the way to becoming crowned national champion in 2019. Currently, she is a business partner on an innovative online video judging practice platform, livestockjudging.com. She will be attending at Texas A&M University in the spring of 2021 to pursue her master's degree and be one of the livestock judging coaches. Welcome, Kylie.
Kylie's not on.
So now we go to the judges.
It's me.
Go ahead, Nolan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, guys, I'm sorry. I'm not going to sound as good as Kylie does when you hear her talk to classes on these cattle, but Kylie couldn't be here tonight. She's also my fiance. She had an emergency she had to get to. She's let me know her thoughts on the cattle and how she wants to place them when we get into our final drive and pick our champion FFA and 4-H. I'll say her ideas there, but we do got how she talked the reasons on the cattle here on video coming up. And so I hope you guys appreciate it. I know she really enjoyed the experience. The thought she had for you guys, and I'll touch on some thoughts when I wrap up the last show I talked tonight, but she just want to talk about how great of an experience it was. And also for you guys too, you guys should be very thankful you got a platform with, the world that it is today and some of the, just the differences and what we got to deal with. You had a platform to exhibit your livestock. And so I think you guys need to make sure, and she wanted to preach this, to thank everybody that put on this virtual show for you guys, because they still gave you an opportunity to make sure you exhibit your livestock. With that being said, I think we can roll right into the market cattle.
We're gonna roll into market cattle.
Okay, so video 1. Let's see, this is a very slow process.
Really nice way to kickstart our FFA show. I think both 1 and 2 in this class are exceptionally good. Minor differences for me, but I guess the black calf that's just blessed with the fresher hair coats pieces just blend together a bit neater from the side. He's not perfect up front, but I do know that relative to the calf in second, his knees set in a bit better. I like that he transitions smoother from his shoulder back into a bolder forehead. I think whenever he leads you, it's impressive that he leads with that kind of pin width and clearance to his hock while still setting down on a big foot that has the right kind of security at the surface. I think the young lady's done an exceptional job. The way this steer balances with the right kind of muscle is where we need to be. Really, really like this one to go ahead and win. I do think, though, the young lady brings this one in second that is probably comes with the most intriguing pieces. I love this guy's just forearm, foot size, and feature. I think relative to his frame size and weight, he's unquestionably the biggest and squarest out of the backside of his shoulder and the most aggressive in the turn to his point edge. Guy's incredibly thick in it, but what I like is that he can still handle it so well out of his rear skeleton. Extra stout rear leg that's still so attractive and sets in right and gets out and covers his stride plenty good. Though why I'm going to go ahead and get him beat is the 1,100-pound steer just reads too immature in terms of his rib design. I think he's a bit flatter in terms of the base of his forerib, and I think his coarser shoulder only amplifies that. I think the steer that's a bit tucked up in his flank could sure use another 45 days to reach his ultimate potential, but in terms of being incredibly good looking and really muscular, he does. As we kick off class number 2, I think the young lady brings us a gold-colored calf that just overwhelms his contemporaries in this group in terms of just raw shape and power. I'm not going to tell you he's a track star, but in terms of doing the right things, in terms of being really opened up through his center body, that's facilitated quite a bit of shape up high and from behind. I like him from that standpoint. Now, I talked about some things we'd want to change. I think it's obvious he gets a bit shorter and steeper out of his hip, maybe more restricted out of his straighter rear leg and shoulder. But I think in terms of just covering the basics of being a good meat animal, for me at least, he needs to surface pretty handily. I think the young lady's done a nice job managing him. The Baldy that comes in second, I think probably counters the steer in first in terms of being made longer and leveler out of his hip. He's certainly more collected and organized in his hock travel when you ask the cattle to lead. I think whenever you just start breaking him down from a fundamental standpoint, that's still a big-bodied steer that's plenty muscular, probably a bit more extended up through his front end. I think, though, the 1,400-pound steer just maybe isn't as crisp and as shapely up high or from behind. I think the steer that's maybe a bit past his prime doesn't come with this same shape over his edges as the other one. But in terms of being a practical calf that certainly counters the steer for his look and structural integrity, he does those things well. Just don't know if the frailer steer is as impressive in terms of his expression up high.
I'm good to go, Mom. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
No,
Nolan.
wait 1 second. Todd's going to announce the winners of those classes.
Okay.
And our first Class 1 steer winner, steers weighing between 1,089 pounds to 1,217 pounds. First place goes to Allison Jones from El Capitan FFA. The second place winner is Mallory Sainert from Fallbrook FFA. The FFA Class 2 results, weighing between 1,230 pounds and 1,400 pounds. First place goes to Delana Sainert from Fallbrook FFA. And second place goes to Jacob Brown from Fallbrook FFA.
You're on, Nolan.
All right. And so, when Kylie was discussing these steers with me and her final decision, she was very impressed with the FFA steer show, especially on the top end in both those classes. The lightweight calves, like as she talked about, that black steer, he just reads ultra complete. He looks like, even though he's a little lighter weight, he looks like a complete fat calf. You study his proportions and balance from the side. That steer looks ultra good in his body shape. He reads practical. He's good in terms of his skeleton, and he has more than enough muscle, obviously, for the most important thing in Point Valley. So he reads as a true market animal. That young lady, as she touched on, did such an awesome job of keeping that steer's hair fresh and keeping him fresh and good looking. Did a really nice job with that steer. That second place steer, Kylie was very, very fond of, and she even thought about switching that pair, even though that steer is probably a little raw, and we can call him greener in terms of his type and kind because of his out there pieces, especially in the rear portion of his skeleton. That is the biggest pin calf that she saw in the show. She loved the muscle expression and dimension that he offered at the top side of his skeleton. She loves the extra dimension that he had in terms of his stifle shape, and his rear leg, for how much mass and dimension he is working back there, works and looks so good from the side. And I think that's something she really tied into. Both those calves she's quite fond of. She does want to change that guy to the front portion of his skeleton and his shoulder. That guy too, as she preluded, being a little lighter weight, maybe just a little bit more mature in terms of his rib cage and his design in those aspects. Maybe not just there as much as the calf that wins that class. That gold calf that wins the next class just reads as a good type of, fat steer. He's big middled. He's a steer that looks soggy. He's practical. He looks like he's got some muscle and he still proportions out good from the side. I think maybe she was one just reading him in nickel planer in terms of his look. If we were going to compare him to the lightweight steers at times, maybe one as well is a little bit frailer in terms of his feature. Maybe his skeleton could be a little bit more organized and collected as we get him out and go and move him. The calf in second, the baldy steer, is just a good type of fat steer that you'd love a whole pen full of them in terms of a feed yard situation. That one's big middled, he's big backed, and he's got muscle, and he's going to grade good. I just don't know if that guy comes with the same bells and whistles in terms of look and just eye appeal from the side. I think we'd alter that calf structurally as well. She thought it was close, and she kept going back to her initial impression. There's one she really liked and wanted to get back to, but was afraid of use just because he wasn't there yet. And so she elected to use the two lightweights to be champion reserve FFA.
Congratulations, FFA champion steer to Allison Jones from El Capitan FFA and FFA reserve champion steer Mallory Sainert from Fallbrook FFA.
And now we'll get into the 4-H steers.
Young lady brings us a black and white steer to start our 4-H show that I think overwhelms his contemporaries in terms of raw shape and power, and easily does it on the most attractive build within this group. He's undoubtedly the most shapely up high and from behind, and I like that the level top steer combines it with some length and extension up front and some attractiveness in terms of his design. Now, he's not perfect. Ideally, I'd like to see him drive his rear heel specifically a bit deeper to amplify his security at the ground, but I still think in terms of being a good-looking power calf, he needs to surface to the top and do so quick. I'll be honest with you, I think the middle in this class got close. For me, though, the deciding factor was the gray steer just stays substantially more collected down his top line, and couple that with his added foot size and feature and longer leveler hip, I think has only amplified his proportions and look from the side. But it's close because I do think the middle pair is full with just sound, big-bodied cattle that read plenty practical, just probably prefer the extras that the smoke comes with. Now, if we're going to be critical, I sure would like to blow him apart through the base of his forearm and see him a bit bigger and shapelier out of the backside of his shoulder. But I still think that that's a good enough looking kind of a steer that covers the basics in terms of body and structure. A nice moderate fat steer that's going to go ahead and win class 2 in our 4-H show. I think this Baldy's just the right speed in terms of being so robust and opened up in terms of his thinner body. It's not only allowed him to lay on the right kind of muscle up high and lay on finish smooth over his last couple ribs, but it still kept him incredibly proportional from the side. I think this guy's structural base and rib design, coupled with the right kind of muscle and market fundamentals, is the right speed. Now, I'm not going to tell you he'll win just a ton of beauty contests from the side. I think if we're going to tweak him, he's probably a bit rounder in terms of his shoulder and shorter about his neck up front. But I still think that's being picky on one that just covers the basics so exceptionally well. Of the entire show that we've seen thus far, this is probably the best fat steer in the making that's most appropriate in terms of his smoothness and degree of finish over his last couple. So excellent job to that young man.
As soon as they have you up, then you read the results. Stop the
The young
video.
man brings us a calf in second that's incredibly attractive from the side. I love the way this steer's head and neck comes out of the top side of his shoulder that's still laid back and smooth, super attractive out of his long and level hip. And I still think he's got more than enough just sheer bulk and power to him. But if we are going to get comparative, I think relative to the cattle that end up on either side of the stocking footed steer, he probably does taper the most through the base of his forearm, maybe give up more in terms of his pin width, and flattens this slightly through the base of his stifle and lower quarter. But I'll say he's got enough, because relative to the calf that'll end up in third, I certainly prefer his current look and skeletal base a hair more. I think this steer is just the right speed in terms of being really complete and still coming with the show calf look from this side.
And so, talking the 4-H show, I think
Nolan,
Kylie had kind of a lot. Yeah.
Nolan, we need to announce the winners of those classes.
I'm sorry.
Now, the winner for the 4-H Class 1 results, and these are animals weighing between 1,000 and 1,165 pounds. First place goes to Faith Hanna from Japatul 4-H. And your second place winner is Wyatt Kritz from 56 Ranchers. In the 4-H Class 2 results, weighing between 1,248 pounds and 1,400 pounds, first place goes to Ethan Rockwell from Valley Center 4-H, and your second place winner is Tristan Robinson from 56 Ranchers.
In that 4-H show, I think Kylie thought maybe there was one, just like she talked about in her reasons, I think just hit her as a fat steer, and she had to go grab 2 lightweights in the FFA show, but in the 4-H show, I think she found one in terms of market readiness and weight, having the power and still balance and look, and one that's just acceptable in terms of the market fundamentals of finish and being ready for endpoint value. That's Class 2 heavyweight steer. She thought kind of handily won the 4-H show. You start looking for reserve, you got that black and white calf from the first class, and then you got the steer from the second class. I think both of those steers mirror each other just in terms of their skeleton and look. I think they give you a neat design and ones that are really current and well balanced and eye appealing. And both those steers have muscle. I think there's one of them, though, we go back to their skeleton and their build's just a little bit better in terms of the way he utilizes his extra depth of heel and how he utilizes the set tip of his hock. And he's better in terms of the front portion of his body and his skeleton as well. She went ahead and followed up with the second place in the heavyweight class to be reserved.
Again, congratulations to the 4-H champion steer to Ethan Rockwell from Valley Center, 4-H and 4-H reserve champion steer to Tristan Robinson from 56 Ranchers.
Now we're going to go live with the top 4 steers. Actually, one steer won't be with us this evening, and then Nolan will give you Kylie's final remarks and pick the overall champion.
So we have all 4 up right now, whoever you want to call on. We have Allison Jones on, Mallory Seinert, I'm sorry if I messed that, Ethan Rockwell, and Tristan Robinson as well.
Nolan, can you see the steers?
I can see him up in the top. I don't see the full screen. I can see some cattle up at the top.
Okay.
So
They're all there.
You want me to pick one, Allison?
Which one do you want to talk? So let's do this. Todd, why don't you introduce them as we have them written, and when we say their name, we'll go to them. So we're going to go with the FFA champion steer. So show us Allison first.
Allison, you need to unmute your microphone and do your video.
She doesn't need to talk.
Oh, there you go, Allison. We see you. So show your steer. We're good. I can't go.
Nolan, do you want to talk the steer?
Yeah, can we get the steer so it's my full screen?
It's coming. Stand by, Nolan.
Perfect. All right, here we got our FFA champion steer. And like Kylie talks about, I think the only thing hindering this guy is, we can get on to him being a little bit of a lightweight. But besides that, that calf's proportions, his look, his balance is awesome. This young lady's done a great job showing, presenting, and getting this steer's hair right. He's really fresh and really correct in terms of his fat steer proportions. Like the steer in terms of his center body, how robust and bold he is through the center portion of his cage. He lays a lot of true mass and dimension there on top of it over his rib and loin as well. The thick quartered steer, when you give him motion and you watch that video from the classes before, stays ultra square and correct in terms of his hock travel. I think that's something that's unique. If you want to get on him, like we talked about, he's a little bit lightweight. Maybe a steer too, we could soften and drop him in his flank in relation to his chest just to make him a little bit more balanced from the side. I think that's being critical of a calf that brings forth a lot of quality.
So we're ready for you to announce the next one.
So the FFA reserve champion steer, Mallory Seinert from Fallbrook FFA. The 4-H champion steer is Ethan Rockwell from Valley Center 4-H, and the 4-H reserve champion steer, Tristan Robinson from 56 Ranchers.
So let's show Mallory's steer.
Mallory, we don't have a video signal for you, if you can hear me. We're going to pin you right now, and hopefully she comes up by then. If not, we'll move to the next one.
And I remember her calf, so I can talk it without the video too.
Perfect. Go ahead, Nolan.
All right, Mallory's white calf that was reserved in the FFA show, like I said, Kylie was very fond of that guy, especially in terms of the rear third of his body and his skeleton. That one's probably the biggest pin steer. It's the most honest in terms of his pin width and power from behind. Huge in terms of his quarter shape, and you get on top of him, he might be the widest and squarest over his loin edge as well. And he plants and drives off a very attractive and secure hind leg that's more than practical enough. I think that steer's upper rib shape's awfully good, but you start studying him like we talked about, he's getting a little bit more mature. He hasn't softened up and boldened up through the rear portion of his rear rib and flank. He's a steer as well up front with that added power. Gets a little bit coarser in terms of his shoulder. He's a steer too. He can maybe fix up in terms of the way he wants to plant his front feet when we get him on the plant, when we study him up front. But still a very, very solid calf with so much eye appeal and power. Kylie had to make sure he got a piece of this Final Four.
Okay, now we can show Ethan.
And there's Ethan. We don't see his calf, but hey, Ethan, very nice job with your steer, young man. That steer, he's correct in terms of his weight. He's market ready. He's finished. That steer's very, very muscular. You've done a great job of making sure, in relation to how much muscle he has, how much cover you put on him, it's very appropriate. That steer's going to stamp a low numerical yield grade. That calf's going to grade well as well in terms of the quality side of things. That steer, too, for his balance and proportions, I think is awfully good for how much power he has. That guy's so practical and good in terms of his skeleton and build. For me, just as a good type of fat steer, he's really hard to fault. Thought you did an awesome job with him, young man.
And now, Tristan.
We get to Tristan's steer, and he was probably the steer in the class that was the looker, and maybe Kylie got on Ethan's a little bit, maybe not having the same extension of look up front, and he probably doesn't. That's where this calf counters him. He's so good in terms of his profile and his lines from the side. He's a very long, leveled hip steer that's ultra correct. Love that guy's build and body shape. I think when we compare him to Ethan's steer, I don't know if he's just as comfortable at the ground in terms of his security, in terms of his rear pastern and hock. I don't know if that steer is just as wide in terms of his pin width and power when we get directly behind him as the steer that beat him in class, but still a very, very nice heavyweight steer that definitely deserves to be out here in the Final Four. And, when Kylie comes back to all of it and, you start sorting these four, and she thought, if it was a jackpot showing a way to go, she knew exactly what to do. But at the end of the day, we're both big believers that banner says Grand Champion Market Steer. And there's one in here just in terms of his weight, how he's finished, the power he brings forth, but still being a practical, good type of cattle. Ethan, congratulations, young man. You're the Grand Champion Steer of the virtual show. And after that, Kylie, goes back to those two FFA steers she's very fond of. She wanted to make sure one of them got a piece because that black one that wins the FFA show is awfully good. Wish he was a little bigger, but Allison's going to go ahead and be the reserve Grand Champion steer.
So Jackie, just FYI, we got Mallory's video back up if you want to showcase her really quick.
Yeah, why don't we pin Mallory for a second?
We'll pin Mallory up there one more time.
Is.
And then we'll move on to Todd after that.
Mallory steers awfully good. And Kylie was very fond of him, just needed a little bit more time, as she said. And I think if this show was a month and a half, 2 months later, I think that'd be the one to turn because that one's rear leg is monstrous and it works good. That steer's loaded with muscle.
Nice job.
And again, we would like to congratulate the Grand Champion Steer. He goes to Ethan Rockwell of Valley Center 4-H, and Reserve Grand Champion Steer goes to Allison Jones of El Capitan FFA. Congratulations to you both. Next up will be the critique of our Market Hog show with Judge Nolan Hildebrand. Nolan originally from Templeton, California, but currently residing in Warner, Oklahoma, where he is the head livestock judge, coach, and animal science instructor at Connors State College. Nolan grew up raising lambs with his family and exhibited them competitively across the state of California. After graduating high school, he attended Oklahoma State University and majored in animal science. While at OSU, he was a member of the meat animal evaluation and livestock judging teams. As a head coach at Connors State, he has coached the winning judging teams at the Houston Stock Show and Rodeo, San Antonio Stock Show and Rodeo, Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, Tulsa State Fair of Texas, and the Dixie National. His 2018 judging team set the all-time reasons record at the North American International Livestock Expo in Louisville, Kentucky. Welcome back, Nolan.
And thanks for having me. I'm getting excited to get into these pigs.
And we're going to roll your video right now. Stand by.
The Market Hog show, I had the pleasure of being able to sort the market hogs and the market lambs, and the market lambs were awfully good, especially on the top end, but I don't know if anything was as deep as this hog show. Studying these shows that were available, young lady's lightweight gilt really sets the tone, I think, in this particular show or division. One, just in terms of being complete, and as I talked to her in class, and you'll hear later on YouTube, maybe it's not a word I just exactly like to use, but that one in this class was that. That one's opened up from front to rear. She's a big armed and bladed hog. That's one that's really secure and square in terms of her hock travel. She goes away. Get on top this gilt that's so good and correct in terms of the texture of her body. She's so opened up because of it at the top of her blade and feeds so much raw shape and dimension at the top side of her skeleton. I think that one's awfully nice. If we're going to get critical of her, we could pick her up in her front feet and drive her up in terms of the altitude at the top of her blade and offer more extension from there there forward. But I think that off-belted, kind of flash-belted gilt, just in terms of texture of muscle and body shape's awfully good. Young lady did a great job keeping that one fresh in her skin and hair. Solid black gilt coming in second is just lean and shapely and extremely high cut ability. I think we take these hogs to the rail. I don't know if one maybe will open up as impressive as this one. She's extremely grooved up at the backside of her spine. She's monster bladed and really square in terms of her upper pin construction. I think where she loses out to that flash belted gilt, you study her through the center portion of her skeleton. She reads drier there through the back portion, especially into her flank. I think that gilt also gets a little bit more upright in terms of her pasterns off both ends of her skeleton. We can make her more comfortable on the drive, soften her up in her body. I think it gets a little closer. Young lady's done a nice job with that hog. Class 2 bearer comes in and, you know, he's definitely in contention. I think this flash off belted, kind of like the same belt pattern we see in our Class 1 winner, is ultra good. I mean, his show bearer proportions and look from the side is hard to turn. I think this guy is just as neat and clubby as any of them as we watch him drive across the pen. Love how the short back bearer still couples a long hip that works with the hind leg that can go all day. He's opened up from front to rear, ultra correct in terms of the texture of his body. I think when we compare him to some hogs later on, he's maybe not as opened up or genuine as you watch him drive at you where he plants his front feet into the ground. I don't know if that bear is just as bold apart and pliable through the rear portion of his skeleton as the ones we're going to talk about later as well. But he's definitely in consideration for me because it's hard to pass up this look and it made it ultra tough for me. I don't know if we see a bear with that kind of look in the show the rest of the day. Gilt coming in too, and as I talked in class, and you'll see on the YouTube, not to sound like a broken record, I didn't know what to do with her because I think she does need more through the center portion of her body. I think she'd be more pliable and better to the texture of her body. I think that one could come with a little bit more mass and dimension and just true width as she comes at you in terms of her skeleton up front. But man, can she motor all day and look good from the side. You got to love the altitude and height she has at the point of her blade. That one's ultra extended and free in terms of her movement off both ends of her skeleton. She still plants some square and agile as you watch her go. I wish she just did it with a little bit more base width, as I preluded to. I don't know if she comes with the same just raw power and feature as the bear that starts. That gilt would be interesting to breed off if they decided to go that route. That one's awfully nice as well. We get into class 3 and man, when I saw this one come at me like this and get her on the side, this black gilt got me excited. I think this view right here sells her out. This one's so extended and neat up front, but to be that powerful in terms of her jawline and feature and power off, still that square and secure in terms of her hind leg. I really do hope, and not sound like a broken record yet again, that this young lady maybe puts this one back in her sow herd. This one's body shape and texture and look and muscle so good. Love this skill in those regards. If we were going to maybe change her, I think we could chisel out in terms of her jowline. I think that's one too, as we talked about the Barra in the last class. She can come at you just a nickel bit more genuine in terms of her knee and squareness there at the ground. But when you get this one on the side, she's awfully hard to ignore. That black gilt's awfully good. And we got a black bear in second. This one, in terms of his freshness of skin, now he's presented. This young lady's done a rock star job at it. He can drive all day, and he's an athlete. I love that about him. His running gears read true. His angles are correct. He's square and fundamental as he goes away. I think he counters that gilt as he comes at you in terms of his knee and his base clearance in terms of at the ground. That guy's texture of his muscles awfully good. I think what just hurt this young lady when I judged this class is I saw the gilt first and she hit me a little bit harder. I think this bear is awfully good. There's times where I want to maybe change some decisions I had later on because I get video of this cat and he's really good. We get in the heavyweights, and the top two in this class I took time on, and I appreciate what these young people have done with their big heavyweight hogs and gotten them to their exact terminal endpoint. Both of them are still so fresh and crisp. This bear, though, is just so powerful wherever you read him. He looks like a mini tank out there. Yes, we can pick him up in his front feet, but for me, you make him that big, that stout and opened up, something's got to give, and so I'll give it to him still because he motors out of his front end like a cat. Love his head carriage and his altitude up there before his blade. That guy gives you such a dynamic look. Young lady's done a great job feeding and keeping the back end of this one to be that crisp and dimensional. Love the pin width and power he offers. Love when you watch him go away, the squareness and how true he stays within his skeleton for how much he's motoring with up top. That bear, I think, is awfully, awfully good and can compete at a lot of places. The white gilt comes in next, and she's the pasture upgrade. And what I mean by that, you study her rear skeleton and rear toes and her front feet as well. She's more upright and correct in terms of those angles. Love that one's forearm and definition she offers there. She gives you such a current and typey look ahead of her blade. Really stout in terms of her jaw and proud of her head carriage. That one opens up extremely wide from front to rear and carries that to the top side of her skeleton. Love her blade work she offers and how much mass and dimension she carries there from there back. What if I'm going to change her and where I beat her in this class, study in terms of her hip and hind leg. That one gets a little bit shorter in terms of her hip bone. You study in terms of her hock and range of motion in her rear pastern. I think she starts to stab and jab a little bit and get outside of her skeleton. But from there forward, that one's my type. And I think ultra, ultra impressive. And we get back out here to pick our champion in reserve FFA Market Hogs. I'm telling you what, I think especially Class 2's winner, you get the top two from Class 3, get into the heavyweights. All those hogs are awfully good. We could have a coin flip between all. Yeah.
Can we announce the winners of the class real quick?
Sorry.
Okay.
And we have the winners first for the FFA Class 1, results weighing from 200 to 235 pounds. First place goes to Emma Thorpe from El Capitan FFA. And second place goes to Shane Forbes from Poway FFA. In the Class 2 results weighing from 244 to 255 pounds, first place goes to Haley Addig from El Capitan FFA. Second place goes to Samuel Serrano from Escondido FFA. In Class 3, results weighing from 265 to 275 pounds, first place goes to Kristen Benegas from El Capitan FFA. Second place to Delana Sainert from Fallbrook FFA. And finally, in Class 4, the results, those weighing between 280 pounds and 307 pounds. First place goes to Haley Addig from El Capitan FFA. And second place to Zachary Padilla from Ramona FFA. Congratulations to all winners.
The point I was getting to on these FFA hogs, they were all good. And you get to the champion drive and you got, the Class 2 winner, the top two from Class 3 and the two heavyweight hogs. Like I said, I think they can compete in a lot of places, not just in the state of California, but throughout the country. For me, I'm a sucker for heavyweight pairs or gilts too now, market hogs that can still handle their skeleton in appropriate fashion and get to that maximum weight and be that good looking and fresh. I like the two heavyweights to be champion in reserve.
And congratulations to the FFA champion hog to Haley Addig from El Capitan FFA and FFA reserve champion hog Zachary Padilla from Ramona FFA.
We get into our 4-H market hogs and the lightweights. I thought this bear in this class, kind of this chromed up, weird belted guy, he just overpowers and runs through the rest of him in this particular drive. Love how opened up he is in terms of his chest. He leaves you extremely square, but still correct and fundamental in terms of his hock. That view right there, you don't need to get directly on top of him. You realize that bear is just working with so much blade width and expression. But with that added mass and width, I think up front it comes at a cost. He gets out in his elbow and gets too outside of his skeleton for me. I like to pick him up at the point of his blade, offer a little bit more extension. I think if we can give this guy a different front 1/3 in terms of his skeleton, the rear portion of it is awfully, awfully good. And I thought it was too good to turn in this particular class. Oh, white bear coming in next. Young man's done a great job with his skin and hair and keeping him fresh. He's the cleaner jointed option, I think, is actually more within his skeleton, especially as you watch the hogs drive at you. He's more extended right there ahead of his blade and maybe gives you a neater look. This guy, to me, though, just reads a little bit more fragile and frailer in terms of his framework and his feature. I think he's a bear, too, that I wish worked with more true shape and dimension. You watch him go, and I think it's kind of just disappointing to me. He gets a little bit too outside of his skeleton. I wish that guy was better there. Wish we can give this guy a little bit more time on feet as well, because I think the front third of his body and his look is ultra, ultra good. Get in our class 2 and look out, folks. This one's awfully good. The first view I got of this one is going away, and for how wide he is and blown apart, that one's hock works extremely well and stays within his skeleton, and this view is just as equally impressive, if not more. He's so busted open in his sternum and his chest. He's proud-headed and tough-jawed and current ahead of his blade. The short back bear possesses so much muscularity and true dimension and shape there at the top side of his skeleton. If I was going to get critical of him, you watch him from the side and how he plants his hind leg, you think he gets outside of himself. Then you realize you're wrong when he goes away. That one's so square and fundamental. That one's texture, his body, his density, his power, his current show bear proportions. I hope everybody that's watching is a fan of this one because I think he's awfully, awfully good.
It's our boy, Tristan.
Little black gilt comes in next, and I think in terms of raw shape and expression, she rivals that bear. She's a big-footed and ankled one that's stout in terms of her forearm as well. The big jawed gilt still proud and current ahead of her blade. I like the texture of her muscle up high. I just don't know if she just wowed me as much in terms of her base clearance and just how bold and robust she is through the center portion of her cavity as the one that wins, but that one is still ultra good. Love the shape of that gilt's muscle and her look. Class 3 comes in, and I think this guy from the side is a show bear deluxe, extended and neat ahead of his blade. He's a tall bladed bear that still feeds some crisp shape and dimension there at the top side of his spine. I think that one's always going to be raw and high cut ability. I don't mind the way he utilizes his hind leg either, even though maybe he's got a little bit longer in terms of his rear toe. But that bear to me is one that's just so good looking, shapely and expressive and fresh and over his edges. If I'm going to change him, I think that guy needs to be softer, more practical through the center portion of his skeleton. I think that guy, as you watch him come at you, could be a little bit more impressive in terms of his chest width and clearance at the ground. But again, a really neat looking one in this class. That initial impression from the side as he drove in, I know that guy, if we're judging him live, would get the gate real quick. I should say pin, excuse me.
Sort of got it.
This gilt, I'm a big fan of this gilt, and I like talking about her, and I've talked about her with my fiance here at the house. I think that one, and I don't want to sound like a broken record because we'll talk about another one here soon. I've already talked about some in the FFA. This one would be fun to breed around because I think this one's skeleton reads so correct. She's square, she's fundamental, she's wide as she comes at you. Even though she pigeons a little bit up front, I've never seen a pigeon that massive and stout, so I'll give it to her in terms of that. That one's so expressive and big in terms of her blade. When I compare her back to the bear, I think she could be a little bit cleaner in terms of her hock joint. I think that one could be a little bit neater through the front third of her blade and her body. But that one, just in terms of doing the basics right, being muscular, good bodied and dense on a skeleton, I think that would last for long. Excuse me. I think she does those things. Young lady's done a nice job with this one. getting to class 4, and this one, I think we can all agree when we watch her from the side, it's not because she's shiny, but you look at her, it's not because her hair's shiny. You study her and you go, whoa. That one, in terms of her extension up front, is so good. That's the proudest headed hog we've had in the show. She's the tallest at the point of her blade. Love that one's crisp shape and dimension. She works from her blade back throughout her pin. She's busted open from front to rear. Awesome in terms of the texture of her body. If I'm going to change her, I think we study her hind wheel like the reserve FFA hog just a little bit. I think she just gets a little bit sharper, more rigid in the way she wants to plant those angles into the ground. But that one, folks, like I said about the gilt, that was second to last class. I really mean it on this one. This one's worth some money as a breeding piece. Young lady's done an awesome job with her. Second place skill, I think, does the fundamentals right of being a good hog. She's good bodied. The texture of her muscle and shape and crispness up high is on point. That one's going to be high cutting and really cut open big at her 10th rib. She's opened up in terms of her pin width, really explosive in terms of her stifle. I think as you see, as she comes at you, she wants to roll her elbow and her toes at you. I want to square her up and make her more genuine there. I just don't know if she has the same wow factor up front in terms of her height, the blade, and extension from there forward to compete with the one that wins. But this one's still awfully good. Young lady's done a nice job getting this one market ready and presented.
Now we have the results from the 4-H Class 1, those weighing 210 pounds. First place goes to Charlotte Jackson from San Diego 4-H, and your second place winner from Tristan Robinson from 56 Ranchers. In the 4-H Class 2 results, weighing from 230 to 250 pounds, first place goes to Faith Hannon from Hapatul. Second place to Tristan Robinson from 56 Ranchers. In the 4-H Class 3, the results weighing from 258 pounds to 270 pounds, first place to Delcy Heath from Valley Center 4-H. Second place to Morgan Michalik from Fallbrook 4-H. 4-H Class 4 results weighing from 271 pounds to 299 pounds. First place to Kylie Conan from 56 Ranchers. Second place from Hannon Otto from Olive Hale 4-H.
Well, we go pick the champion in reserve 4-H, and again, I don't know if this show was just necessarily as deep as the FFA show, but the top end was so good. And there's two hogs, I think, that take this competition to another level. Two of them that hit me extremely hard. And, you know, there's one of them, though, that I saw first that hit me really hard. Young ladies Class 2 bear is going to be champion. That heavyweight gilt that's awfully good will be reserve.
Again, congratulations to 4-H champion hog, to Faith Hannon from Hapatul 4-H, and 4-H reserve champion hog, Kylie Conan from 56 Ranchers.
So I have Faith up right now.
Okay, we're going to start reading.
Exhibiting the 2020 San Diego County Fair virtual show
I see this one
FFA.
blown up too. Sorry.
Excuse me?
Yeah, we're getting it right now. We're going to pin the video. Go ahead and pin Faith Hannah.
Okay. The 4-H champion hog to Faith Hannon from Hapatul 4-H, and 4-H reserve champion hog Kylie Conan from 56 Ranchers.
So Nolan, do you want to talk Faith's hog, and then you can talk Kylie's, and then we'll bring the two, then we'll pin each one of them separately, the two FFA ones, and then you can pick your grand.
Yeah, so this is Faith's pig.
This is
The champion
Faith right
4-H
here. Yep.
Faith, awesome job. I think this guy's a creature. I think he's very impressive livestock. You study him right there, just see now the pan. His general angles and his footwork so good. He's stout and he's opened up, and why I think he's good, he could have his head in the dirt eating and he still looks like a champion. I mean, that one's awfully good. In the video, you're driving him great. Love the way that one's hind leg works. That one's very current in terms of his type, but more importantly, that's a practical, productive market hog that make a bunch of people money. very, very nice job.
Okay, let's pin Kylie's.
You see Kylie? Yeah, she does. Stand by, guys. We're having a few technical difficulties, so please stand by. So hers looks like it's frozen anyway, Scott. So she is on my gallery view. You see the backside, that one right there. Yeah, you see that's. So let's move on and maybe we can come back to.
Okay, Nolan, do you want to talk about Kylie's pig?
The gilt that was reserved?
Reserve 4-H?
Yes, excuse me. I can see her videos trying to load up in the top, but like that video we just saw in the last class when she walked out in that heavyweight deal, awfully good. And like I said, I saw that bear first and he hit me hard. I think that bear had the advantage in terms of being more secure in his hind leg. But that hog that wins the Bees Reserve 4-H, her just current look, her muscularity, her power, but still do it with that kind of attractiveness and still a front skeleton that motors like that with that much extension, I think is awfully neat. Like I said, I think this one, a lot of people, show pig guys, will love to get their hands on her and make her a breeding piece because I think this one's really, really good as well.
Exhibiting the 2020 San Diego County Fair Virtual Show FFA Champion Hog is Haley Attic, El Capitan FFA, and FFA Reserve Champion Hog, Zachary Padilla from Ramona FFA.
Do we have Haley's pig?
Yes, so stand by.
Okay.
It's actually going to come up as Darcy Attic. So stand by. We're pulling her up right now. There she is right there, Scott. You see a headshot? Hi, Darcy. Or Haley, sorry. And we see you now. Go ahead, Nolan.
All right, once we get on the FFA champion hog, the big heavyweight bear, and we talked about this young lady, I believe, drove the one that won class 2 as well. Still, I like to change him in his front feet, but like I said, for a heavyweight bear in that class, to stay that organized and good in terms of his skeleton, but be that fresh and crisp up high is awfully, awfully hard to do. I commend the young lady for that. The density and texture of his body is good. That one's pin width and power as he goes away is maybe as impressive as any we've seen. We can modify him up front, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, and I've seen the pig show at the San Diego County Fair. It's awfully, awfully tough. And this virtual show, I'd love to see all these live because I think this would have been one heck of a show. These bears are good. I mean, and these gilts. I think this guy, like I said, his presence, his feature, his power is hard to deny. It's going to be interesting to pick a grand.
And now can we go to Zach?
Yeah, we're going to go to Zach Padilla next. There you go.
Zach's white gilt. And, I think it got a little closer there for reserve, but I remember how much time I took in that heavyweight class because I do really appreciate for a hog this heavyweight and powerful and chiseled out in her forearm. She's still so correct and good in terms of the angle of her pasterns and her toes and her feet. She grabs the ground with a lot of circumference and cushion at the ground. As we talked to her in class, I don't think she forfeits any look. I don't think that one forfeits any density or texture to her body. I don't think that one forfeits any muscle, the other one. I think she just gets shorter and rounder out of her hook bone. I think that one could be a little bit neater in the way she plants her hind leg and be more secure and square as you watch her go away. But that's a tough jaw, neat looking one up front. Young man's done an awesome job with her. And so we go to pick the reserve, and I'd love to have all 4 of these hogs right next to each other, and even probably about, 2 or 3 more that we left in classes that aren't here right now next to each other in that ring. But right now we can't do that. I wish we could because I think it'd be one heck of a pig show and it'd be a very impressive display of farm animals. There is one that I think is awfully good, and I'd like to see how he would handle the reins in Oklahoma. That 4-H champion's hard to turn. He's going to go ahead and be grand. We get into reserve, and I think it gets a little closer. I want to pick that FFA hog up in terms of his front feet, but I love that he's a heavyweight one. That gilt's also, though, a heavyweight one. We can't forget. She's better in those aspects. I think she wins the beauty contest and doesn't forfeit any horsepower. The gilt that's in the reserve 4-H will be your reserve grand.
Grand Champion hog goes to Faith Hanna from Hoppatul 4-H, and Reserve Grand Champion hog goes to Kylie Conan from 56 Ranchers. Next up will be the critique of our Market Lamb show with Judge Nolan Hildebrand.
Ready whenever you guys are.
Stand by, guys. We're pulling up the next video. Nolan, you're slowly losing your light as you get darker in your world. I don't know if you can pull up a cab light or something, but we're going to lose you eventually.
Let me shut that door real quick. Here, one sec. Hold that there.
There you go. And
We get in
got
our
your
lightweight
video.
FFA market lambs, and I think this ewe lamb really sets the tone for the show. And we're going to find out this young man brings a slew of good ones. This one's patterned in power, is hard to turn. Love her roundness and athleticism she offers to the center portion of her skeleton. You get up front for the added power and look she has. For the added look she has, excuse me. She's still opened up in the correct ways and progresses right. That one, we get her in motion, I still think stays ultra organized in terms of her skeleton. As you watch her go away, maybe she could have a little bit of clearance in terms of her hawk travel. That's a ewe lamb, I think, that's awfully nice. Blue weather that comes in too is one I think, he's lean, he's expressive, he's extended. He looks like an athlete to me. He's square and correct in terms of his hawk. I think that guy's strong and correct in terms of the angle of his pasterns and his toes. I like his athleticism and look from the side, as I preluded to earlier. If I'm going to change this guy, I think he could just use a little bit more time in the feed bunk. He leads a little bit more raw over his edges in the one that starts. I think that one's also just a little bit more pronounced in his breastplate as you watch him go. He could be a little bit more collected leveler in terms of his spine as well, but a really nice weather to go ahead and be second. We get into class 2. Yeah, I think this Weller that one's so neat for how shallow he can be in his chest in relation to his flank. But more importantly, besides that look, that guy's so round in terms of his body. He's opened up the top side of his skeleton and powered up wherever you study him. He could maybe a little bit slender or longer, but I don't care. That guy stays so collected in his skeleton. He's opened up. Love that sheep. I'd show him if I'd let my sister show him any day. Young man, brings 2 in here and goes 1-2 in the class. And, that weather's not here to be all ranting and raving how good this ewe lamb is. I think her progression up high is right. That one's not only square and neat in terms of her hip, but she's still long and level out of it, but still powers off a functional and correct hind leg. Like that one, smoothness of pattern and look from the side. When I compare her to the weather that starts, I don't know if she's as big in her forearm, as clear and wide in terms of her chest clearance as she comes at you. I don't know if she's just busted open as much at the bottom side of her body. I think if we got to touch him, the weather would probably touch a little bit square and more aggressive over his edges, but a really nice pair in this particular class. Class 3 was tough, and I took a long time on the top end. Yes, I think this weather's a little bit more mature reading in terms of his head. I wish his neck tied into the top of his shoulder a little neater and he kept his chest up in him a little bit better as you move him. But from there back, that guy's awfully good. So round and correct in terms of his rib shape, lays in so much true power and dimension there at the top side of his skeleton because of it. You study this weather going away. For how thick-ended and big pinned he is, he still stays so square and correct in terms of his hock. Love this guy's smoothest of pattern and balance from the side. As I already preluded to, we can change him up front. He could be a little bit more youthful in terms of his type and kind. That's a really nice weather to go ahead and win this particular class. Young man's weather coming in second. I think Counter's the one that wins up front. He's a slender, neater necked one that's a little bit more eye appealing the way it ties into the top of his blade. Like that one in terms of the angle of his shoulder and his athletic look and runs uphill from the side. Just that rear view, when I compare him to the one that wins, I don't know if he has just as much true dimension at the ground or mass. We can blow him apart, make him a little bit rounder and bolder. I don't think if we got to touch him, I think this guy would maybe hold the trimness and youthfulness advantage, but I don't know if he'd be as massive and dimensional, especially over that loin edge as the one that starts. But that's a really athletic, good skeleton one. If he's a little bit more powered up, a little bit bolder at the base of his heart and his forerib, I think we can like that one to win. But if you wanted to switch him, I understand. That one skeleton's really good. Getting the heavyweights, and I commend this young man. I know it's hard to keep sheep looking youthful and fresh at this weight, and he's done that, and that's a hard task. This guy's opened up, he's chiseled up high, he's really big and expansive in terms of his pin set, but more importantly, I think that guy in terms of his muscularity, how he can correlate that, and on an athletic skeleton that works, I think is ultra unique for a sheep with this much frame and weight on him. You get in front of him, he's still youthful and tucked up in his chest in relation to his flank. I'm going to get critical of him. I think he could be more defined in terms of his forearm. I think that's a sheep that could have maybe just a little bit more turn to the lower portion of his leg. But that's a really athletic, good-looking heavyweight that's still fresh and presented to the tee by this young man. Second place in this class, if you go back and watch the tape, it runs about 4 or 5 deep in here, and this one's awfully good. I don't think this young man came to the county fair to get second. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry that you're here, but this is a good sheep, and we need to talk about him. He's opened up. He's square. That one's maybe a little bit rounder and bolder and more honest to the turn of the bottom side of his body than the one we just talked about. That one has a lot of shape and dimension up high as well. I don't know if he just comes out and organizes skeletal system as the one that wins. I think he deviates and gets a little bit wonkier in terms of his hock travel for me. I'd like to change him there in those regards. But still, and I think also, too, you study his muscle, it might lay on him in a little bit rounder of a fashion compared to the one that wins. But if you wanted to start this guy just in terms of base clearance, power, body shape, and freshness, I wouldn't argue very long because this young man's done a great job presenting and getting this weather to this point.
And we're going to Todd.
Now we have the results. First, the FFA Class 1 results. These are animals weighing between 105 and 115 pounds. First place goes to Oscar Ledesma from Fallbrook FFA. Second place to Taylor Michalke from Fallbrook FFA. The winner in the FFA Class 2 results, weighing between 120 and 135 pounds. First place goes to Oscar Ledesma from Fallbrook FFA, and second place also to Oscar from Fallbrook FFA. The FFA Class 3 results, weighing between 138 and 143 pounds. First place goes to Haley Addick from El Capitan FFA, and second place goes to Oscar Ledesma from Fallbrook FFA. And finally, the FFA Class 4 results, weighing between 147 and 195 pounds. First place goes to Oscar Ledesma from Fallbrook FFA, and second place to Connor Bast from El Capitan FFA.
excuse me, sorry. And we come out to pick champion FFA, and I think there's 4 or 5 sheep you can make a really good justification on using. I just think, there's one that hit me extremely hard in terms of being that opened up, but still that unique and current in terms of his chest design from the side. That class 2 is going to go ahead and be your champion. Gets a little closer for me for reserve. I just think the sheep from the heavyweight class comes out of a class that's just too tough to turn and not a piece of it. That heavyweight sheep will be reserved.
We'd like to
Can we get in
congratulate
our
the
4-H? Sorry.
Go ahead, Nolan, I'm sorry.
Oh, we get into our 4-H lightweights, and I'm sorry interrupting Todd. But this blue sheep, his only thing that hinders him in this show for me is he weighs 102 pounds. And I talk about that in the video. That one's athletic skeleton. His look, his balance is so good. I still think that one is so correct and good in the way his muscle and how it's organized at the top side of his skeleton. I like that one, and I appreciate him for being that young and youthful and raw and lightweight. He's still so smooth and correct in the way his edges blend in, especially the way his loin blends into his hook bone. That sheep's awfully nice. I think it'd been fun to maybe if this young man could have exhibited him at the state fair in the naturals. Getting our second place slam. Sorry. Young man brings another good one. He's opened up. I think that one's square and more dimensional as you study him in terms of the way he places his hock and his lower leg into the ground than the one that wins. He's the bigger pinned one that's thicker in terms of his stifle. Love the sheep's body shape and pattern from the side as well. I just don't know if he's as extended as the one that wins. I don't know if he's as neat in terms of just his length of body and levelness from the side or his pattern and profile. Also, too, for how wide and dimensional he is from behind. I wish he offered more base clearance in terms of his chest as he comes at you, but a really nice one to go ahead and be second. Getting in class 2, and this young man brings a big handful of good sheep in here, and this one I think's awfully good as well. His smoothness of pattern for how much muscle he has is awfully unique. That one's opened up and correct in his skeleton. I think he reads as the athlete in this class that just needs to win. If we're gonna get critical of him and you'll watch him go, his left rear, he gets a little bit more upright and straighter in terms of the angle of his pastern. I think he'd be more relaxed there and take a more fluid and longer stride. But again, I think that's his sheep. That's still awfully nice to study. The one in second, there's a sheep in third in this class. I think they really resemble each other of doing a lot of the good things. Those ones are ultra round bodied. They're opened up and they have a lot of muscle. I still think they balance good from the plant. If I'm getting critical of this guy, though, as we watch him motor compared to the one that wins, he doesn't just stay as organized in his skeleton. I think he just needs to be a little bit more secure and genuine in the way he handles his hock. I think that one also up front maybe just doesn't come with the same bells and whistles and extension as the one that wins. That sheep from a power and terminal aspect is awfully good. Love his body shape. I think if we got to touch him, we'd be ultra impressed because his muscle looks on point. Getting to class 3, and the young man yet again brings another good one. Not a surprise. I think this guy takes it to a little bit different, degree than the rest of them he's brought, though, except that lightweight. I think this one's opened up so good in his skeleton. He's better in terms of his rear pastern and hock when you motor him. compared to the one he wins with the last class with. That sheep's so dimensional in terms of the inner and outer portions of his leg. You get on top of him, his muscles wide and genuine, but lays in there correct and progresses good. Love his athleticism. Maybe he can be a little neater in the way his neck ties into the top of his shoulder from the side. We can shove him back in his plate just a little bit up front. But I think that's being critical of his sheep that I think is awfully, awfully nice. Second place sheep, the first video I got of him when I saw him, it was like an up close from directly on the side, and I didn't know what to think of him. But you watch this guy motor, this one's skeleton might be the best in the show. His range of motion, the set to his rear hock and pastern's absolutely perfect. He stays so square and genuine in terms of his skeleton. Love this guy's body shape and muscularity he possesses. I think compared to the winner, he's just maybe not as thick or big to the lower portion of his stifle in his leg. I don't know if he comes with the same fuzz, foot size, and foot feature as well. We can change him there. Maybe change the way his loin hooks up into his hook bone from the side. That sheep, in terms of his skeleton and his basic angles, is really, really nice. Getting the heavyweights, and like the FFA heavyweight, I admire this sheep for the stage of the game he's in terms of weight and maturity. He still looks youthful and fresh. He's opened up. He's good in his basic build, and he has a lot of muscle. This guy gives you an athletic look. I don't think any of them in this class coupled just pattern, power, and presence the same way this guy did. Young lady's second place in this one, I think, is a really good sheep. I want to change him the way he handles his hock. I think he could be a little neater up front. But that one, his body shape, his muscularity, his general squareness is so good. He's a smooth pattern one that blends that extra power with some presence from the side. Like that guy in terms of his upper hip construction as well. As I said, compared to the winner, I bet if we got our hands on him, he's probably the shorter measuring one. I think he might have the advantage in terms of youthfulness and freshness maybe, but I don't know if his hind leg works as good as the one that wins. I don't know if he's going to be just as long-bodied and neat-looking from the side, but this sheep is still awfully, awfully nice to go ahead and be second in the heavyweights.
And we're going to go back to you, Todd.
Okay. Welcome back. Now to give you the winners in the 4-H Class 1 results, weighing from 100 to 117 pounds. First place goes to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, and second place also to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H. In the 4-H Class 2 results, weighing from 120 to 129 pounds, first place goes to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, second place to Daisy Bender from Fallbrook 4-H. In 4-H Class 3, results weighing from 133 to 143 pounds, first place goes to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, second place to Kelsey McCaffrey from Valley Center 4-H. And in the 4-H Class 4 results, weighing between 150 and 160 pounds, first place goes to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, and second place to Delaney Barnes from 56 Ranchers.
When we come out here to pick champion 4-H, and again, I think a show that was ultra competitive and deep. I don't want to waste any more of your time. You've heard me talking enough. I don't want to sound like a broken record. All the sheep are athletic. Their skeletons are good. They have as much muscle as you can put on them that lay in them in organized fashion. I like that class 3 to be champion. I like your class 4 to be reserve.
Again, congratulations, 4-H champion lamb and 4-H reserve champion lamb to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H. Allow me to reintroduce our champions. Exhibiting the 2020 San Diego County Fair Virtual Show FFA champion and FFA reserve champion lamb is Oscar Ledesma from Fallbrook FFA. And the 4-H champion and 4-H reserve champion lamb is Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H.
Well, it's cool to get them out here on Zoom and see them live next to each other. You can see now with their weights, there's some differences in size and maturity. These young people right here, these two young men need to be commended. My family, as we preluded to in my bio, we grew up raising and showing these things. And to be able to present this many weathers, this high caliber, and be presented this good and fresh and have this much quality to them is not an easy task. And I really, really compliment both of them from those regards. Before I pick your champion in reserve, just one thing for all you young people maybe listening here live or going to listen to this later. Thank the show staff for doing this. As I preluded to earlier in our comments before we got into the steers, this is a lot of work. And there are some times maybe there's frustrations or some differences in opinion at things. But at the end of the day, this live video is about the closest you guys can get to showing them like you need to and how you want to. And it wouldn't be possible without the fair staff, going to Jackie Eshelby, Nicola, Oscar, all the people I've gotten to work with the last 3 days. It's been awesome, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And to study livestock this nice and good, and I want to also commend on both things, the swine and the sheep side of things. All of you showmen do an excellent job of presenting your animals. You got the basics down and can show them awfully good. I think both these sheep are good. You know, there's one of them, though, I think is a little bit more unique in terms of the base clearance he offers, the added muscle and power he brings to the table, but can still be that shallow in his chest, that neat bladed and current looking. I don't care if his neck could be longer. He's still so good in my mind. The FFA is going to go ahead and be your champion. We're going to follow that up with the 4-H. That one's too good to turn. He'll be your reserve grand champion. Again, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I'll get Jesse Henson on here to help you with your goats.
Again, congratulate grand champion lamb. He goes to Oscar Ledesma from Fallbrook, and the FFA reserve grand champion lamb goes to Alan Morris of Fallbrook 4-H. Next up will be the critique of our market goat show with Judge Jesse Henson. Jesse was originally from Canton, North Carolina, but currently resides in Warren, Oklahoma, where he is the assistant judging team coach at Connors State College. Jesse grew up on a large cow-calf operation that he ran with his parents and two brothers. After graduating high school, Jesse attended Connors State College for livestock judging and was named an All-American. After Connors, Jesse attended Oklahoma State to major in animal science. While at OSU, he was a member of the 2018 National Champion Livestock Judging Team. Besides being an assistant judging coach, Jesse and his family run a competitive show goat operation.
Appreciate the chance to be on here. I'm looking forward to talking to the young exhibitors about the goats.
Stand by, we're pulling up the video.
We started our FFA show in this first class. I thought this goat won the class pretty handily. This goat's pretty high quality. You know, I really like this one's just substance and mass that he comes with. He's opened up and rugged in his build. He's round and athletic in his body shape. That allows him to lay on, a lot of muscle there on the top side of his skeleton. A goat that remains athletic. I think this exhibitor just brought us a really high quality one to win the first class of your FFA show. You know, the goat that comes second, I think, does a lot of the things that our winner did. That one's big-footed. That one's stout-featured. I really like his body shape and what he has working with up high. I think we get in behind the goats and compare this one to the one that wins the class. He's not as massive in his upper hip. He's not as big in his pin set. I don't think he's got as much stifle or lower leg, but sure enough, one that gives our winner a run for its money in terms of its look and its feature and its foot size. another high quality one to follow there in second. We're in our second class, and this one was probably the most difficult for me to find where I wanted to land. And the goat that I did land on, I think needs to win this class from a carcass potential standpoint. For me, maybe even in the whole FFA show, I prefer this one's muscle shape and expression the best of any. Really good texture to his muscle in terms of the top side of his skeleton and there in his leg and his stifle. I bet if we get our hands on that one, he'd be pretty impressive in just the amount of shape and how square you to handle with up high. And then from the side, I still like how that one's shallow in his chest in relation to his flank. I think the goat we can pick on a little bit in terms of the set to his hind leg, a little straighter there. But in terms of just carcass potential and muscularity, I think this goat wins the class rather handily. The goat that comes in second, I think this one does a lot of things from a fundamental standpoint that are really correct. From the side, that goat proportioned well. He's level, he's tall fronted, he's extended. Really like him coming at you. He's a stout skull goat that's opened up in terms of his chest. For me, when you get on the side in this view right here, I just read that guy to be a little more bunched up in his kind. I think he's the shorter bodied goat. I don't think he's as extended as the one we talked about, but still, I think a really high quality one to come in second. In the middleweights of the FFA show. Hey, we're gonna go start dinner. Meet us back in the house. We get our third class. I thought this one was really deep. The red goat that I found to win. I don't like this to use this word very often, but this goat hit me as complete. I think you study that one from what he needs to be as a market goat. He's stout skulled. He's opened up in his lower skeleton. He's opened up in his body shape. Because of that, I think that one's got the right kind of muscle and it lays on right on the top side of his skeleton. What I like for being a massive, rugged built type of goat, watch him here on the move. He stays really athletic. I really like that goat's presence as he moves around. Really like his athleticism. For me, just a really complete goat to win this class of heavyweights. The kind of painted up goat that comes in second in this class, I think matches the class winner in terms of his skeleton. He's tall fronted, he's extended, really level in terms of his design. I like that guy's just presence, his reach, his flexibility when he gets in motion. I think getting comparative to the goat that wins the class, this one just becomes a little frailer in terms of his foot size and his feature. For me, that was enough to keep him second, but another high quality goat here to come in second in the heavyweights of your FFA goat show.
Now we'll have the results. In the FFA class, Class 1 weighing between 67 and 76 pounds, first place to Mallory Sainert from Fallbrook FFA, and second place to Paula Jimenez from Escondido FFA. In the FFA Class 2 results, weighing between 78 and 86 pounds, first place goes to Wyatt George from El Capitan FFA, second place to Megan Kelly from Ramona FFA. And finally, in the FFA Class 3, results weighing between 90 and 97 pounds, first place goes to Kaylee Bowles from Poway FFA, and second place to Caitlin Miller from Poway FFA.
So as we talk about our FFA goats there, for me, the one that needs to win the show just as the one that's the most complete and probably does covers the market fundamentals the best with still having a skeleton that works right is that heavyweight, that solid red goat out of class 3. That'll be your champion. For reserve, I'm going to go back to the lightweight. I thought that one was pretty good, maybe just not quite there in terms of from a market standpoint is the one that wins, but still a good goat there to be reserved. So again, your champion will be out of class 3, your reserve will be out of class 1. Congratulations on the FFA side of things.
Congratulations to FFA champions. Market Goat goes to Kaylee Bowles of Poway FFA, and FFA Reserve champion Market Goat goes to Mallory Sainert from Fallbrook FFA.
To start our 4-H show, I thought this goat that wins the lightweight class did so rather handily. Man, the first view of this guy's from the side, and I think he just reads with a lot of quality. You know, I think quality livestock just have a presence about him. And man, when this guy, you know, hits you from the side, I think he's sure got that. He's level, he's tall fronted, he's got a lot of elevation and extension up front. And then yet I think that goat's still opened up in terms of his chest floor, athletic in his rib shape and massive up high. I think a goat, you know, he is a lightweight and he's going to be a little more immature than some we see later in the show. But man, I sure a goat that comes with just a tremendous amount of quality. Congratulations to that young exhibitor. The goat that comes in second, you know, for me, the biggest thing wrong with this goat is just that it comes in a class with a really good one, because I think this goat covers the fundamentals very well. I mean, his skeleton's correct. You know, I really like his body shape. I think he's trim and he's going to have a lot of, you know, cutability if we think of him from a market standpoint. I think when you get comparative, though, to the one that wins the class, this guy just becomes a little frailer in terms of his foot size, in terms of his bone work and his skull. And for me, that's just enough to keep him in a safe second. But again, a high quality goat, really good pair there in the lightweights of the 4-H show. For the second class, I thought this goat needs to win. You know, I think he does the best job of covering the market fundamentals. You know, it starts with a really stout skull and that initial view even coming to you. You know, I think that one's really stout skull and wide chest just lays the foundation for what you're going to find from there back. Really opened up there behind his shoulder, good shape there over his rack. If we handled him, I bet that guy's pretty impressive and how fresh he is. And I think when he gets propped up, that's a tall fronted goat that's got some extension. You know, if I'm going to pick on that one, it's probably going to be skeletally. I think he gets a little shorter and steeper out of his hip. He's a little straighter in the set to his hind leg. And because of that, maybe he's not as athletic on the go as some that we find within this show. But man, that one's opened up. He's muscular and he's good looking. A high quality goat to win the second class of the 4-H show. You know, for reserve, I think for me, this goat probably just covers the fundamentals, you know, the second best in this class. His skeleton's correct. He's level in terms of his design. He proportions correctly from the side. I just think you can pay him to the one that wins the class. This one needs to be more opened up in his lower skeleton. He needs to be stouter in terms of his bone work. He needs to come with more mass up high. But for me, he needs, you know, to get talked, and he needs to be second in this class just for how that one proportions from the side and how he stays so fundamental in terms of his skeleton. we get in our heavyweights, and I think this goat that wins the heavyweights, does so quite handily. And to be honest, young man, you just got a really good one here. I think this one has a presence about him that just reads with a tremendous amount of quality. There from the side, he hits you as an athlete. That one's built right. He proportions up correctly. He's good in his lines. And, you think, well, for that one to be that good looking, is he going to give up some power? And the answer is absolutely not. Get in front of that goat. He's extremely opened up in his chest floor, really bold in terms of his forerib, and round and athletic in his body shape. That allows him just to lay on a tremendous amount of shape up high. And, I'd sure be impressed probably to get my hands on that one, because I think he'd be really, really fresh to the touch. Just a high quality one this young man brings us in the heavyweights. Congratulations. For second in this class, again, I think a high quality one, and that just speaks for the depth of the show that y'all have within your county there. But, this one initially hits me. You can see his definition of muscle from the get-go. Really big in his hip and his stifle. I bet if you got your hands on that one, tremendous over his rack. I bet he's really square over his loin. Just a goat that I think reads exceptionally good in terms of his muscle shape and where he's at from a fat content. I think you can pay him to the one that wins the class. He's not as opened up going away. He's not as opened up in his lower body. Because of that, I don't think he reads as round or as robust in his rev shape. But again, another high quality one to go second in the heavyweights there.
Now we have the results. In the 4-H Class 1, animals weighing between 66 and 73 pounds, first place goes to Madison Causey from Fallbrook 4-H. Second place to Julia Bellavance from Sagebrush 4-H. In the 4-H Class 2 results, weighing between 78 and 85 pounds, first place goes to Paige Palsick from Valley Center County 4-H, and second place to Holly King from 56 Rancheros. In the 4-H Class 3 results, ranging from 86 to 90 pounds, first place goes to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, second place to Madison Causey from Fallbrook 4-H.
Are we going to see these things one at a time now? Is that
We're going to call them up for you right now, Jess.
perfect? Awesome.
Jesse, you need to select your champion 4-H and reserve champion 4-H, and then we'll bring in the final
Okay,
four.
perfect. Sorry about that. So in our 4-H show, for me, there was a goat that I think, it was deep. The quality was good, but I'm not taking away from that. But there was still a goat that won that 4-H show rather handily, and that'd be that heavyweight, a real nice one there. For reserve, I think we find a goat with the same type of quality, just maybe needs a little more time. That lightweight will be your reserve. So again, the heavyweight will be your champion. The lightweight will be your reserve in the 4-H show.
Okay, congratulations to 4-H champion market goat Alan Morris of Fallbrook 4-H, and 4-H reserve champion market goat goes to Madison Causey from Fallbrook 4-H. I'd like to welcome to the Grand Champions Drive again. Allow me to reintroduce the final four. Exhibitors, if you would please raise your hand when you hear your name. Exhibiting the 2020 San Diego County Fair Virtual Show FFA Champion Market Goat is Kaylee Bowles of Poway FFA.
Young lady, I thought you did an excellent job with this red goat here. And like I talked about within his, within the FFA division, I thought this guy just came really correct. He's really complete in his skeleton. He's good in his muscle. He's the right kind of weight. I think this goat really just fits a lot of parameters that tie together for this one just to be really complete and a really competitive one there. Congratulations.
FFA Reserve Champion Market Goat is Mallory Sainert from Fallbrook FFA.
Mallory, I really liked a lot of things about your goat, especially to be a lightweight with the amount of power he has. Right there, you can see that one's got the right kind of look from the side. I think a goat, with being a lightweight, he becomes a little more immature compared to a couple other ones. But I don't think that takes away from his quality. a really nice one there for you to be reserve FFA. Congratulations.
4-H champion market goat is Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, and the 4-H reserve champion market goat is Madison Causey from Fallbrook 4-H.
So we have Oscar up right, or I'm sorry, Alan right now.
Yeah. So Jesse, you can talk to 4-H champion and then we'll bring in the reserve.
Okay, so the 4-H champion, like I said, I think that goat hit me as hard as any, just from a quality standpoint. Really good presence to him. That one just has a high quality look to him, but yet it's backed with plenty of muscle, and he covers the carcass standpoints very well. I think a really nice goat there to win the 4-H division.
And now Madison.
As we talk about that reserve in that division, I think, like I said, he follows the champion in terms of his quality, really good in terms of his skeleton, kind of like our FFA show. I think that goat comes a little lighter weight, a little more immature, and because of that, probably just gives up some extra mass to a couple other goats in here. But a goat that, I think comes with a tremendous amount of quality. We got 4 out here, and that's the ones that are in contention for Grandin Reserve. But I'm surely confident looking through these videos that if this was a show that did a top 5, I'd be confident I could fill those slots with high quality goats, because I do think the depth was extremely well. It was a pleasure to get to look through the goats and, kind of in a different type of platform than being live. But I still think the people behind the fair board here that allowed you to have this opportunity still to present your livestock, I did an excellent job. And their job is definitely thankless. You can't thank them enough for what they do to try to help the youth of the livestock industry. So my hat's off to them. My hat's off to the exhibitor for sticking with it. It'd be easy just to give up when times get as tough as they have. But obviously you kids have stuck with it. So my hat's off to you. I commend you, a ton for that. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for bringing me a high quality set of goats. I think there's a goat that wins this show rather handily. From there, it gets a little more, challenging. I think there could be, 4, 5, 6 different goats that could fit that reserve. But no doubt in my mind that champion 4-H is an absolute animal, and he's going to be your grand champion market goat. As we talk about our reserve, like I said, that gets really close. For me, the one that comes the second best in terms of being, a little more complete, a little more there from a carcass standpoint, from a market standpoint, is that red goat out of the FFA show. He'll be your reserve.
And we'd like to congratulate the grand champion market goat, and that honor goes to Alan Morris from Fallbrook 4-H, and our reserve grand champion lamb goes to Kaylee Bowles of Poway FFA. Once again, congratulations to all of our exhibitors who were recognized this evening. Thank you for turning into our first ever Junior Livestock Virtual Show. Remember, bidding goes live tomorrow morning with the virtual Junior Livestock Auction online. Join us Saturday morning at 9 a.m. when we will be live celebrating our 2020 Don Diego Scholarship winners and kicking off the live portion of the auction. Again, good night.